Welcome back to the Severe Setup, folks. We are here to look ahead to UFC's latest installment from St. Louis, Missouri this weekend. Derek Lewis versus Rodrigo Nacimento. But look, I think we look past that main event. We'll talk about very briefly, and when I say very briefly, and we can look down towards a card that's not actually that bad, and there is a couple of interesting fights, and we're going to pick the best of the rest on that card on the setup this week. Derek Lewis and Nacimento as the headliner, Harry. Look, it's late in London right now. Your tolerance level for fights, the waving arm of death is out in full force. It's propelling like a windmill on a gusty day. You do not want to talk about this fight, but I'm going to force you to talk about this fight. And I hate to start off on a negative foot, but oh man, this is a bad main event. And I really, really feel bad for all the fans in Missouri. Like, does Derek Lewis have ties close to Missouri? Is there a reason why they're putting him there? I don't know. I know he's a Texan. He's a Houston guy, isn't he?
I thought he was a Houston guy. Yeah, it feels to me as though this is one of those, we need a main event, right? And Derek Lewis will do, because he's a massive fella and he goes and he does these sorts of things, right? Like, he is the perfect UFC main event fighter for this type of fight night card. Like, he just fits perfectly. So I'm not shocked that we are seeing him in this spot. I don't think the fight is meaningful. I don't think that it's going to be a fantastic fight. But it exists. It's in St. Louis. I think, as you say at the start, we could talk about it specifically, but I think the rest of the card holds some real gems in comparison to the main event. And so we should probably be directing our attention there. But yeah, look, Derek Lewis, we haven't seen him in a little while, right? So it'd be interesting to see sort of where he is in his perpetual cycle of either being an actual athlete or, just turning up to fights completely unprepared. And if he comes in, like, frankly, if he comes in prepared Derek Lewis, athlete Derek Lewis, been taking things seriously Derek Lewis, he's a good fighter. Like, he's a good heavyweight fighter. There's nothing wrong with him whatsoever. And he'll give problems to Rodrigo Nacimento. It's just whether he has actually done that. Because if he's coming in for a paycheck and just to get rolled on, that's what's going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, I think we saw that against Marcos Rodrigo de Lima, him coming in looking a bit more dedicated per se, but then a horrible stylistic matchup for him against Jailton Almeida, and a terrible fight as well, to be honest. Look, it took that at short notice, of course, but I think a better stylistic matchup for him against Nacimento, who you would imagine will want to kind of stand and bang. But, Lewis does hit hard. You can turn many a striker into a grappler, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in that co-main event. Joaquin Buckley will compete. He fought hard for this position, and fair play to the UFC. They gave him this position in the co-main event slot against Nursultan Ruziboev. Very interesting to see the level of progression in Joaquin Buckley, a guy, in my opinion, Harry, that seems to be finding himself a little bit as a fighter. And this is going to be a tough test for him, obviously, in the 170-pound division, coming in this fight on a 3-fight win streak with wins over Andre Fajalio, Alex Morono, and Vicente Luque in his last fight, where Ruziboev is coming in himself after a very impressive performance against Cedric Dumas in his last fight. That was an easy enough win, but a win over Bruno Ferreira in the fight before that. So your assessment on both of these fighters and how they may match up in the co-main event?
I do feel as though the UFC is potentially giving our boy a little bit of a slippery banana skin here because of the ruckus that he caused at UFC 300. Like, Ruziboev is a good fighter. He can grapple. He can do a bit of the striking. He's got decent cardio. And I completely agree with you that for Joaquin Buckley, this is what he wanted, right? He wanted to fight in front of his home fans. Co-main event is a huge slot for him. And given the names that he's got on his record so far, this is a fight that we should be looking at as not just winnable, but simply winnable for him. He's got the UFC experience now. He has the confidence. He knows the skill set that he's building towards. When he first started in the UFC, he was very much just an athlete. Then the Impa Kasanganay thing happened. And then from there, it feels as though he has done a good job of sort of battening down the hatches of the technical gaps that were missing in his game, and now has turned into something of both a freak athlete but a technical fighter. I just wonder if the UFC know what they're doing here a little piece, which it doesn't seem as though this is sensible matchmaking if they're looking to set up Ruziboev to win here, and to sort of put egg on the face of Joaquin Buckley. But I've been impressed with Joaquin Buckley's takedown defense of late. It's still a little bit too athlete-y for me, but over and back, that's going to improve. And he knew that this was a fight that was coming because he's had time to prepare for it. And yeah, I'm very interested to see how he comes out and how he looks in this specific one.
Yeah, you see, I don't know whether the UFC are trying to create a situation where they want Joaquin Buckley to lose, but I do think they have created a precarious situation for him where he wanted in on this card. You know, he probably should have been added to this card from the get-go. The UFC should have known that. And I'd say credit to him. He went out and called his shot. The UFC have given to him. I'd say it's more of a fact that this is the only guy that would agree to come in and fight Joaquin Buckley at somewhat short notice. We got 44-fight veteran here, a good veteran test. He got that in his last fight against Vicente Luque. But the problem you have with this one is that lack of name value, really, around Ruziboev. A guy who is a good fighter would be a good win for also a fight on Joaquin Buckley's case at short notice as well. I think more so trying to, more so set Buckley up for maybe more named opposition, getting him on the regular scale here, getting him fighting again in quick succession, building a little bit of momentum. He seems to be, using his time on the mic and using his time at press conferences very well. And yeah, I think this is an interesting fight for him. But I think I agree with you. Sometimes, be careful what you wish for. And this could be a be careful what you wish for kind of fight for Joaquin Buckley. It'd be interesting to see if he gets the job done in the co-main event at 170. Rest of the main card, not too much to write home about in the next couple of fights. Alonzo Menafield, Carlos Ulberg at 205. Diego Ferreira versus Mateus Rebecki at 155. Quick thoughts on those two fights, Harry?
Very interesting to see what Ulberg does here. This does feel to me as though it's an IQ test for Ulberg. I think striking-wise, he is better than Menafield. Menafield is a very, very good athlete and finds a way to sort of stumble his way into takedowns and stuff. If Ulberg is able to do the thing that he's sort of known for at the moment, which is skirting outside of that tram line, being the counter striker, being the sniper, being that guy that's able to find you in those moments, then he should be just fine against Menafield. And I think that is a big hurdle for him to climb in his ascension up that division. And Rebecki and Ferreira, like, Mateus Rebecki's got decent armbar. Diego Ferreira is getting old now. Both two mid-level 155-pound guys. It will probably be a solid scrap, to be honest. Ferreira is always in exciting fights, and Rebecki's got big hooks and decent arm bars, as I've said. I'm excited for it in terms of I'm interested to see who wins, and I'm interested to see the scrambles. But yeah, again, sort of not. I would have put the next fight in this specific fight's place, I think.
Indeed, and that next fight we will stop on. Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy versus Sean Woodson. A very, very interesting fight. Obviously, look at Alex Caceres is, talking about fighters finding themselves and stuff like that. He had a good run there, good wins against Julian Rosa, good win against Daniel Pineda. Not so lucky in his last couple of fights, or his last fight, I should say, against Giga Chikadze. He lost the grappling match also to Nathaniel Wood, but comes in here against a Sean Woodson, who, look, we've talked about time and time again about Sean Woodson, how great he is. And the thing that impresses me the most about Sean Woodson is his ability to use his length, his reach, and using it in a terms of distance control and making other fighters fight to the beat of his drum rather than the opposite. It's very, very hard to close the distance against a guy like Sean Woodson. Charles Jourdain found it difficult. Lost a split decision in that last fight. Dennis Bazooka lost a unanimous decision the fight before that. And, I find it real difficult to see a result where we see Caceres getting his hand raised at the end of this fight too. In my humble opinion, I think, Caceres does have that unorthodox striking, does throw wild shots, and maybe that is the key to beating a guy like Sean Woodson. But I just think that Woodson is a little bit too tricky. Will probably keep on the outside a little bit and force Alex Caceres to win and counter him to a win in this fight. But I'm wondering what you think of this matchup. And am I off a little bit in my assessment of this?
I don't know that you're off. I just think I'm not yet ready to make that assumption because Alex Caceres is a puzzle. And whereas when you fight people like Dennis Bazooka, who's a fight you expect somebody of Sean Woodson's level to win, you then go and you fight somebody like Charles Jourdain, who's a puzzle in and of himself, but is sort of your fundamental good level UFC fighter, good grappler, good boxer. What level are you? Are you better than him or are you not better than him, right? Alex Caceres is a very, very different type of puzzle, and a very different type of puzzle in that there is the weird, unorthodox angles striking. He'll throw fucking rolling thunders. He'll try to hit weird offensive movements in his grappling situations. And so for somebody like Sean Woodson, this is what do you do against the guy that you're not sure is what he's going to produce? Like I was high on Sean Woodson. I wrote a severe spotlight about Sean Woodson. I might even wrote 2 spotlights on Sean Woodson, but a spotlight was written on Sean Woodson because he is somebody that has that fundamental skill that is so rare when you're talking about a guy that is long, and that's his ability to fight long and fight long effectively. Caceres is also long, and he's got a high output of kicks. And so I think if there is going to be, and I'm very, very interested to see how Sean Woodson solves the problem of Alex Caceres. But the way I'm framing it in my mind, at least, is Caceres is Alex Caceres' unorthodoxy has the potential to be a banana skin for somebody like Sean Woodson, who, when you look at that Charles Jourdain fight, it was a split decision for a reason. It was a split decision because Sean Woodson was getting caught in the odd dashing moments that Charles Jourdain was good, strong, and powerful. And I wonder whether we can see some difference. Slight shout out to Alex Caceres as well for going and challenging himself and taking a grappling match. Forget who it was against. Doesn't matter that it's Alex.
Daniel Wood. It was great. Yeah, fair play.
Right? But fair play to him for taking time out of his MMA schedule, right? And he said this in the VT stuff that Polaris put out. He was like, look, I really enjoy grappling just for grappling's sake. And it's good that it's not against like a grappler or whatever. They said this, I just see it as a bit of fun because obviously I'm an MMA fighter. I've got an MMA fight coming up. We now know it's against Sean Woodson. But he's like, sure, I'll travel to England. I'll have a look around and, I'll get a grappling match in. Fine. Fair play to him because not many fighters will do that.
It's lucky he didn't see the King of Essex over there. That's all I'll say. He wouldn't be walking straight now. That's all I'll say. We'll just leave it there. No, one thing I want to ask you about Sean Woodson is seems to always, and we've seen him, I think, twice now, and he's kind of long reign in the UFC, get to this point and fail. And we saw maybe a possible glimmer of that, like you said, in the Jourdain fight, where it was a split decision, it was close, it could have went either way. Do you think this fight will be the deep be-all or the end-all for a guy like Sean Woodson and whether he can get past that threshold? Or do you think he has enough time to bounce back if he doesn't get his hands raised? 31 years of age right now. I feel this is an important fight to kind of prove that he can take that next step up the division at 145. I'm just curious to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, massive fight for him in terms of the divisional sort of ceiling that he has. I think if he goes out and he wins and it's a close fight, fine. What we learn is that he's probably in and around this level, and he's going to be the Alex Caceres style fighter that as fighters come up, you're like, okay, cool. Here's a guy that's 145 pounds, that's 6'2". Yeah, off you go. See if you can figure out that fucking problem, because that's not an easy problem to fucking solve, right? If he goes out and he trucks Alex Caceres and styles on him and looks great, cool. What we know is the Charles Jourdain, the other fights that have been trickier for him, we can go out and we can reassess those wins. If he goes out and loses to Alex Caceres, either close fight or in a demonstrable win, then again, we know the sort of ceiling. I think Woodson, whilst I was quite high on him in his debut, I've certainly tempered those expectations now, and I would be more leaning towards him topping out at just outside of the top 15, or maybe just inside the top 15. But nothing, I don't think we'll be looking at much more than that. You know, you've already mentioned his age. The skill deficiency for him to go much, much higher than that would need a significant acceleration from what he has right now. And that's not to say that I don't really, really enjoy watching him fight. I think the style is very, very, very interesting. And he is a very unique problem in the 145-pound division. But yeah, massive fight for him against Caceres. Massive.
100%. Moving on. You were looking at the first fight of the main event. You're maybe wondering Saturday night, when's a good time to put the kids to bed? I think you found your moment, because Despaigne is going in there against Waldo Cortes-Acosta, and we're going to see some damn violence there from the Cuban sensation. I mean, look we can leave skill set to the side door here. We're looking at a freak of nature coming in here, 5-0 against Waldo Cortes-Acosta. I believe coming off a win against Andrei Arlovsky, just checking that, if my memory is correct. Yes, it is. My memory is solid. And, you know, a fight that he was taking the piss in, and he was kind of, you know, not taking that seriously, and it kind of left a bitter taste in my mouth. He ain't going to be able to do that stuff against Despaigne, because Despaigne hits hard. He is a killer, and I'm very excited to see him in there again, Harry.
If Waldo's Cortes-Acosta doesn't run across the cage, change his level, and take this man down, I will be shocked. Roman Despaigne has come in and in 5 fights has amassed, 13 seconds of fight time?
Yeah, something like that's insane.
Like, again, that is a unique problem to solve. Like, that is a very unique problem to solve. Somebody that is so high on confidence, so high on athleticism, so high on combat experience outside of MMA, obviously, it's a very, very difficult problem to solve. This feels to me like the UFC know exactly what they are doing, and Despaigne is going to run across the cage instead and fucking flying wheel kick this fella into Rosed, and then he'll, you know, loft his hands. He's already taller than the cage, like, and
yeah, that, like, he can, like, you know, when he's getting in, he needn't even bother closing the cage door for this. Like, he can just hop over, just like hopping a gate, getting into the octagon. He's so tall.
Yeah, it's insane. So, I suspect a first round whacking here from Despaigne, and then we move on to something slightly more interesting in the heavyweight division for him.
Indeed. We'll stop very briefly at Chase Hooper versus Vlashev, Borshev, Slava Claus. Oh boy, this has potential to be a real dangerous fight here for Chase Hooper. You know, talking about running across the cage and looking to try and take this fight down, you could say the exact same thing about this fight, eh?
I think that Chase Hooper won't be fighting Borshev. I think Borshev will be doing all of the fighting in this one. Look, we've talked ad nauseum now about Chase Hooper's sort of progression and the speed of his progression. He is still a young man, but this feels very much like the Edmund Shabazian, but to a far harsher degree, where Chase Hooper came in just unbelievably green into his UFC debut, could do a bit of the grappling, but not a huge amount of the grappling, far more sport jiu-jitsu related than it was MMA grappling, and then no striking whatsoever. And we're putting him now against Borshev, who, okay, Mark Diakase out-grappled Borshev, fine. Mark Diakase also offers huge problems on the feet for Borshev, and instead decided to opt for his grappling because that's where he felt that it was safest for him to be. But Chase Hooper is not going to offer the same problems for Borshev on the feet. Borshev hits like an absolute truck, great body shots, and I honestly could wake up on Sunday, check Topology, sorry Sean, and see that Chase Hooper wins this fight, and I would be relieved, genuinely relieved, because I just feel so guilty at the UFC having not said to Chase Hooper, cool, look, we're on this contract. We're going to actually turn you to a developmental contract. You're going to go back to LFA or Fury or wherever it is, and you're going to have another 6 to 8 fights. And then we'll see you back when you're 24, 25, and you can actually fight, you know? But instead, he's in against Slava Claus, and it could be a fucking real shit show of a fight for Chase Hooper.
Yeah, definitely does have that potential, and hopefully Chase Super doesn't get badly hurt. I mean, it's a non-fight on the feet, to be honest, between the two of these guys. I think Chase Super's only chance is to kind of get that fight down. We've seen Borshev be a little bit kind of have a lack of defensive awareness for the takedown and lack of ability to get back up to the feet. Let's stop at Terence McKinney, who goes in there to fight Esteban Ribovics in the lightweight division. Ribovics 1-1, lost to Lok Rajabov in his UFC debut, a win over Camilla Kirk in his last fight. McKinney himself, mixed bag of results lately for him. Coming off two losses over Ishmael Bonfim and Nazim Sadikov, 2 wins over Mike Breeden and Brendan Murat at short notice. He's taken a big jump in competition here against Ribovics, and I'm very interested to see how he does. How do you think he will do, Harry?
Don't know, but it's fight of the night.
You reckon?
Yeah, it's fight of the night. Yeah. McKinney will throw the kitchen sink at Ribovics. Ribovics and Esteban was one of my favorite fights of last year. Real sleeper of a fight. It was either the curtain jerker or the second fight of the night on whatever card that was on, and it was just a great fight. Really good fight. Ribovics is tough. He's strong. He hits hard. McKinney is tough, strong, hits hard. But Terence McKinney is more of an entertainment fighter, and I think Ribovics has a slightly higher upside. That's not to say that Terence McKinney can't put him away. I think it'll be a fun fight.
Indeed, one fight, and I think the fight I'm very intrigued and most excited by on the card is that of Tabitha Ricci, who goes in to take on Tecia Torres at 115-pound women's division. Cracking fight this, and 2 very well matched fighters as well, Harry. How do you see the fight going down?
Good question. I think the time off for Tecia Torres will be interesting as to how she comes back. Obviously, congratulations again for Tecia Torres for having her first child. Tabitha Ricci's on a fucking tear though, and has been looking really good of late. I think Tecia Torres is an interesting matchup, given that she's of similar height, similar stature, and Tecia has that very kickbox heavy with adding some grappling style elements to her game. I think I'm picking Tabitha Ricci in this, but I'm not super confident in that pick, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I would be along the same lines as well. I think Ricci has been on a good run, and Torres coming back from that layoff. It's going to be interesting to see how she does. I'm really excited for that. I think that's the one of the low key great fights on the card, in my opinion. 2 very well matched. I want to stop on Jake Hadley versus Charles Johnson, and I am not confident that Jake Hadley is going to get the win here at all, Harry. I think this is a horrible stylistic matchup for him. We've talked ad nauseum about Charles Johnson and his ability to defend the takedown, his ability to land strikes on the feet, and his overall general well-roundedness. And I think it's a level of well-roundedness that Jake Hadley can have in his career, but hasn't accumulated enough yet. And I just think that this, with all due respect to Hadley, who is also a great fighter, is just the wrong fight at the wrong time for him. What do you think?
So I think Hadley actually has all the skills already. I just think that he's far too ego-driven, and he is far too reliant on being tough and hitting hard. He comes from a good lineage of grappling. He trains with a gentleman called Camby, who is Leon Edwards' grappling coach, one of Leon Edwards' grappling coaches alongside Tom Breese. And he also has Bradley Hill, who is an absolutely phenomenal black belt. So it's not like he doesn't know what he's doing. It's just that he puts himself in situations that he absolutely does not need to be in. And I think...
Why do you think he does that?
Because that's the person he is, you know? Like, you remember the story that came out around him having some issues on the Dana White Contender Series, that there was some miscommunication, or there was, something that happened around him and one of the backroom staff. There just seems to be that he's a guy with a chip on his shoulder. And whilst I'm sure that has served him drastically well in portions of his life, it doesn't seem like it's proving to serve him super well in his fighting career. I was going to say Charles Jourdain then. That's not who he's fighting at all. Charles Johnson, we know, is a good fighter, can grapple really, really, really well, has been improving his striking ever since he's been in the UFC, has good cardio.
I can tell you what, if Hadley does get the win, it's a very impressive win. I'd be very impressed if he gets the win here, but
agreed.
I wouldn't be too confident about that. It's a very, very tough stylistic matchup for Hadley. Moving on, Jared Gooden will take on Kevin Jousset. We obviously were introduced to Jousset when he defeated Kiefer Crosby at 293 in Australia. Went on then to win a unanimous decision over Song Kenan. Faces off against Jared Gooden here in the welterweight division. Gooden himself coming off a win over Wellington Turman. Interesting fight here for Jousset. I feel a fight that's been set up to kind of get another win for Jousset. I think he has the ability to do that as well, Harry.
I agree. Completely agree. When I saw this fight immediately, I'm like, oof, that's a Kevin Jousset whacking. That is like, Jousset stands in the pocket, hits hard, good judo. Jared Gooden fights long, could get whacked. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's a Kevin Jousset win, relatively easy, I think.
You'd be surprised if he didn't do it inside the distance.
I'm thinking like mid-round 2, I reckon. And I think it's a submission too.
Oh, nice. Interesting. Yeah, very good. Very good. Yeah, are we going to go for the Harry Powell prediction of Kevin Jousset hurting Gooden on defeat and then going for the submission?
Yes.
I'll remember that, and we'll give you your flowers if that does happen on the breakdown next week. Want to stop at the opening fight on the card, and our girl, JJ Aldrich, is back, opening up fights on cards, doing what she does best against Veronica Hardy, giving it people the heights of hardship inside the octagon. She takes on Veronica Harding, or Hardy, excuse me, not Harding. Harding is I had a friend called Harding back home. So Veronica Hardy in the flyweight division. How do you see this fight going down? This is a tough test, as it always is against someone and a fighter with the level of capabilities that JJ Aldrich has.
This is a low-key banger for me.
Yeah.
It's a low-key banger in that, look, we know what JJ Aldrich is bringing, and I think this is a really interesting test for Veronica Hardy, who come back to the UFC, come back into the UFC fold, come back into her MMA career fold, and had a couple of good wins, right? Has looked to improve her hands. Her grappling is obviously still there, has been there for a while. And now she's this is the test, right? Can you get the grappling working against somebody like JJ Aldrich, who has much improved grappling over her UFC career? Can you show the same level of striking that you have seen? We've seen improvements in with Veronica Hardy against somebody who we know has such crisp, clean hands. I don't know. But this is a really interesting matchup for both fighters, because can JJ keep it on the feet? Can she keep it at the distance that she is comfortable with? Can she keep it away from the clinch? Can she get to a position where she is comfortable fighting in the grappling realms with somebody like Veronica Hardy? Is that something that she is now able to do so with the improvements to her skill set? And exactly the same question, but in the polar opposite for Veronica Hardy. So I think this is a great matchup for both of them. I think it is a low-key banger. And I'm very interested to see who takes this. If you're going to push me, I will pick JJ Aldrich. But I would not be shocked if I woke up on Sunday to see a Veronica Hardy unanimous decision.
Indeed, yeah. A good fight to get us kicked off on the UFC St. Louis card. That wraps up the severe setup. Look, at overall, this fight card, if I could describe it in a way, as a man who does not like icing on his cake, you know what I mean? Sometimes you got to eat a piece of that cake and you can leave the icing to the side. And I think you can say that about this event's main event. Okay, you can push that to the side. We got a couple of crackers on the undercard. And you know what? There's going to be lots to talk about on the balance breakdown next week. At BJJ_Harry Powell is where you'll find that man over there. At O'Neill MMA. Enjoy the fights this Saturday. We'll be back next week to break them all down. Good luck.